Alright, so looking into tomorrow, this is tomorrow afternoon. This is what your low-level jet looks like. It's actually strengthening quite a bit because your area of low pressure, which is over here across the Ohio Valley, is strengthening a little bit as well, because that second trough that came back from the west is combining with it and adding to its strength. And so this low-level jet is strengthening and is very widespread. And you can see that the winds are extending up to 50 miles per hour in the lower levels of the atmosphere coming on in. So that, again, that's going to help in advecting all that Gulf moisture up onto the eastern side of the storm. And then even as far north up into here as upstate New York and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all these areas are going to have moisture coming on in. And so there's going to be a big blob of rain on the eastern and northern side of this area of low pressure. And because down in the south here, you have the strong low-level jet down in here advecting warm air and moisture in, that'll be conducive for some thunderstorm development. So the low-level jet is there. That's the first thing you need. The next thing you need CAPE. So coming on into the south tomorrow, this is what your CAPE is going to look like. Again, most impressive the further south you go. So, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama. You have CAPE values going up to 500, 600. That's not really a lot, but that does show that there will be some instability present during the day tomorrow. And as you head into the evening, the CAPE actually tries to move farther to the north, and you actually have values of up to 1,500 over the south here. Very marginally, though, over the panhandle of Florida. Mainly they're under 1,000, but you can see it's kind of the instability is starting to come up the coast, and the reason for that is alright, so this area of low pressure here, it's dragging a cold front on the southern end, right? Pretty strong cold front. On the eastern end, it has a warm front that's extending horizontally across here, like that, from west to east. That's your warm front. Now, as this moves to the north and east, it's going to be dragging its warm front up the coast as well. And so any area that's in between the warm front passage and the cold front passage is what we call warm sectored. The warm front brings in warmer, moister, and more unstable air. And that's what sets the path for lift, vertical motion in the atmosphere. So as that happens, that creates vertical motion and lift in the atmosphere as your cold front moves through behind the warm front. And so that would be conducive for, shower and thunderstorm development across that area. So by tomorrow evening, it's going to be probably extending across Pennsylvania into Long Island and New York City. Cold front all the way back down here. So the entire eastern seaboard is pretty much going to be warm sectored. And so what I'm worried about is, you see this instability is coming up the coast here. And let's go one more frame. By 42, look, it's extending all the way up into Long Island and New York City. Some weak instability. Not a lot, but weak. But strong enough where there will be a chance of thunderstorms all the way up the eastern seaboard into Massachusetts, Connecticut, southeastern New York, Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, Washington, D.C., and then back south across Virginia. And then as you get further south here, notice how your instability is a little more prevalent towards Florida, the Panhandle here, Georgia, the Carolinas. This is where I'm worried about a severe weather threat, mainly for... You saw the low-level jet was prevalent, so you might get some wind shear there. And so what I'm worried about there is possible little bit of rotation, so maybe some isolated tornadoes. The low-level jet would help with that. It would also help with the advection of moisture coming on in, so heavy rain would be a threat across the entire eastern seaboard. And maybe a small hail threat. Because, again, there's not a lot of CAPE. You need more hail for CAPE to you need more CAPE for hail to be a threat. But you can see that there will be some instability here, so I am worried about also a squall line developing along the cold front behind the warm front. That's my concern here. You typically get squall lines to form along cold fronts, and I was looking at the wind profiles. The winds are going to be going in the same direction across all levels of the atmosphere. So that's what we call a unidirectional wind profile. And that means that damaging winds would definitely be a threat. Straight line damaging winds out ahead of your squall line of storms. And again, it's mainly going to be across the south, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. Alright, so that would be your severe weather threat for tomorrow, which is tomorrow night. Now, your line of rain and embedded thunderstorms is going to extend northward up into the Great Lakes region. You're going to have a blob of rain extending all the way up here, and then along your cold front, its whole thing's going to be extending upward. So as you get up into areas up into the east here, I do think you have a chance of seeing some embedded thunderstorms. Will there be severe weather? I don't think so. There's not enough instability present. If anything, you could see some gusty winds, but I think that'll be about it. I think your main threat up here, again, everywhere there's going to be a threat of heavy rain. Everywhere. But again, heavy rain and flooding is your main threat everywhere. But up into the east, that's pretty much going to be your only threat, to the northeast there. Not really a severe weather threat. Alright, and now we're going to take a look at total accumulated precipitation according to the European. So, this is through Tuesday night. Look at all this is all the rainfall here across the south, the Gulf Coast extending back upward here. So this is 2 to 3 inches of rain across the Gulf Coast here, across Tennessee, Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and southeastern Arkansas and eastern Texas. That's up to 2 to 3 inches of rain here. And then as your low pressure moves up the coast here, it will be advecting moisture in across the northeast here from the Atlantic Ocean. So we're looking at a good 1 to 2 inch rainfall in a narrow swath here from eastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, up into the lower Hudson Valley, maybe even New York City, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and into southeastern Maine. Then your moisture kind of is a little bit more scarce as you head further west, but again, still the threat for heavy rain there, mainly a ½ inch to 1 inch of rain. And then back across the Great Lakes, you have another source of moisture there, so you get a flood threat over there. Alright, so anywhere in the red, that's going to be your main area that you have to watch out for flooding through tomorrow. And then Monday night, I'm worried about flooding over the lower Hudson Valley, Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and into Massachusetts and the New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. That'll be into Tuesday. I think those areas you'd have to watch out for a flood threat, possibly over 1 inch of rain. Long Island and New York City, I think you're going to see more like a ½ inch to 1 inch of rain. Most of the models keep the heavier rain to the north and west. However, there will be instability in the area, as I showed you with the Cape coming up the coast, so I think there will be a threat of heavy rain and gusty winds with any thunderstorms that do form. So I'm going to stick with a ½ inch to 1 inch of rain for Long Island and New York City. Maybe a little bit more as you head further west into Nassau County and into New York City. There could be 1 inch or maybe a little bit more, but not too much. Your main flood threat is going to be to the north and west, but watch out for a couple thunderstorms Monday night. To look at one more thing that we use to forecast this. Hold on, where is it? Here it is. Alright, so this is what we call, this is Monday night precipitable water. This is a measure of the amount of moisture that's present in the lower levels of the atmosphere. It's basically a measure of if you were to take a vertical column of air extending from the surface up to 300 millibars of pressure in the atmosphere. If you were to go from the ground to that level in the atmosphere and you were to squeeze that out, this is how much rain you would get. And so this tells us how much moisture will be present in the atmosphere here. And you can see that your values are most prevalent across the southeast, where you're near the Gulf and you have that moisture coming in. These are values of over 2. So you get very heavy rain here across the Carolinas, Georgia, and northern Florida. And then your PWs keep going up here across Virginia and into Pennsylvania, where they're around 1 to 1.5. And again, it also extends across the Lower Hudson Valley and to these areas I was worried with about flooding. Now, I did say you would be getting less rain over Long Island and New York City. However, your PWs are pretty high there because you're near the Atlantic Ocean, where that moisture is going to be advected in. Now, the reason your flood threat is still going to be further to the north and west, because even though your values look like they're going to be below 1 across the areas further north and west, what tends to happen with rainstorms is sometimes heavier rain falls in these areas where they have lower PWs anyway, because of the moisture being advected from this area of high moisture back into the area of low moisture here, if you get what I'm saying. Because your low pressure is all the way back here, so the trough is going to be absorbing it back to the north and west. So all the moisture that's across the ocean here and across these areas along the mid-Atlantic coast, it will be absorbed back further to the north and west, where will be your main flood threat, since your low pressure is further to the west. Okay, and that again, so your threat in this area that I'm circling right now is going to be through, this will be through tomorrow during the day into tomorrow afternoon. Now, Monday night into Tuesday, your threat for heavy rain extends all the way back up into the northeast. Okay, Monday night into Tuesday morning. Okay, and then for the extreme northern New England, that'll extend throughout the day on Tuesday, but Monday night into Tuesday across southern New England and the mid-Atlantic would be your main threat for seeing some flooding. I think you're going to have to watch out for sharp rises on small streams, and especially across the northeast, there will be some river flooding. And so we're looking at a good 1 to 2 inch rainfall in a lot of places that I outlined. Okay, and possibly 2 to 3 back across the Gulf Coast. 2 to 3 inches of rain. Any thunderstorm that you experience would produce heavier rain as well. Okay, so I know it's a little bit disorganized. I apologize, I couldn't make any draw any maps here. But that is my forecast for this system. I don't think we're looking at too much snow for this system. I think it'll be too warm for that. But that's your main heavy rain. Heavy rain and flooding is the main threat everywhere, and then possibly some severe weather across the south. All right, thank you for watching, folks.